Hello, everyone. Hi, Akash. Let's see who else is here. We have Thomas, Akash, Yishu. Is that how you pronounce it? Yishu?
Yes. Hi, Professor. It's
Hi,
Izhuo.
how you doing?
I am very good.
All right, let me get the stream going. Okay, this is week number 9. Wow. And it's the second day, and we are going to be discussing the project and the prototype. Okay. All right, that's starting. Let me also share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All
Yes.
right. All right, let's see. Can everybody see my screen over here? All right, let's go in there. Let's take a look at the syllabus. All right, let's see. All right. Okay, excellent. Let's see. We are just about here. We just talked about RESTful services earlier this week. Let's see. This is let me minimize the stream. All right, can everybody see the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So we just finished discussing RESTful APIs, how to create our own RESTs API. I'd like to spend some time talking about the project. I did make some changes on the agenda, which why is it not showing here? No, it's not showing here. So I'd like to talk about some of those dates. Okay. If you go to the assignments, you'll notice that there are several project-related assignments, and this is in addition to the assignments that you're already working on, right? This is a team project, right? That you are going to work together collaboratively, which you might already have done the first one. The first one is just basically setting up the teams, coming up with a description of what it is that you're going to work on, right? So that if you could have that by later this week, March 22nd, just make sure that you have a team. Although you could have a team of one, right? If you decide to do it on your own, that's totally fine. But a maximum of 4 folks per team. And also, if you could have, just maybe a paragraph or so describing what it is that you're going to work on. It's not set in stone. I mean, you can change what you're working on. That's fine, as long as you're within the requirements of the project. You can really do whatever you want. You don't need to ask for permission. You don't need to ask us for any fees. Then you can just go ahead and do it. The also for the, my hope is that by the end of this month, on the 29th, you'll have a working prototype of what it is that you are going to be implementing. And there's a minimum requirement for the prototype, and we'll talk about that. We will create today what the minimum is for that prototype. Obviously, it's a minimum. You can definitely go beyond what the minimum requirements are for the prototype. I actually encourage you to go as far as you can with the prototype. And then after the prototype, every week there will be a weekly meeting with the TAs, right? There will be a meeting, the first demo of your project, where hopefully that week you will have made some significant progress from the prototype, making it a little more realistic, more concrete, and then you'll meet with the TAs for, I don't know, 20-30 minutes, very casual meeting where you're going to demonstrate your progress to the TA, and he'll give you some feedback. They'll give you some feedback. It'll mostly be to make sure that you are understanding the requirements correctly. That if you have any questions on how to interpret certain things, that's the time to make sure that you resolve those doubts. And then you should make some commitments for the following week in demo 2, project demo 2. You should make a commitment that a week later you'll have you'll make some additional progress, right? And so you'll say, well, by the end of next week, I hope to have so and so feature done. And finally, you'll have a third and last meeting with the TA when the project is due, which is April 21st. That's I believe that's the last day of classes. That's when the project is due. Now and then you'll demo your final project, and the TA will come up with a grade on that. Now these dates, it says due April 5th. Really, what it means is that obviously not everybody's going to be able to meet with the TAs all at once, so the meetings will have to be staggered, perhaps 3-4 teams a day. But obviously it'll probably take several days, right? So it means that the week of April 5th, right, there should be meetings happening all week, right? Maybe starting on April 5th for 3-4 days, you and the TAs are going to be meeting and reviewing what your progress is, and then same thing for April 12th, right? You'll be meeting on starting on April 12th for 3 or 4 days. You'll be meeting with the TAs. The TAs will schedule you so that you can meet with them. And finally, when the project is due on the 21st, right? Again, that means that you should stop coding on April 21st, right? That's it. No more coding. But the actual demo of your application should be within that week, right? The 21st, 22nd, 23rd, right? Whatever the TAs can schedule you in. Obviously, some folks are gonna have to go before others, and so who goes first, who goes last, that's gonna be random. And so yeah, but just make sure that you have everything done by the 21st. Okay. All right. So yeah. So that's the project. So today we're going to focus on implementing a project prototype, just to give you an idea on what it is that we are expecting from you with the project prototype, right? So again, I'm going to build something minimalistic, the smallest amount of progress that we expect you to be at least by the end of this month. Hopefully you'll be much beyond that, but yeah. So we'll see how you're welcome to use what it is I'm going to be working on today, except the RESTful API that I'm going to be using, right? You can't use that, right? Because that's the one I'm using, and it's only for demo purposes. Okay. What else? I think that's it. Any questions? All right, so let's get going. We'll create the prototype, and then you're welcome to use it as a template. Okay. All right, so let's go and use a terminal here. And let's go into WebDev. And I believe in here, if we go to 2021, if we go to spring, and if we go to section 1, I guess. So, oh, sorry, no, section 2, right? Section 2. So we're going to create a prototype application here. I'm going to only work on the front end today. Obviously, you'll need both the front end and the back end. All right, so let's use npx to create a React application. And I'll call it WebDev, SP21 and 02, yeah. And I'll call it Genuzi, and I'll call it the prototype, and this will be the React client. So let's give it a minute. While that's going, let me show you the API that we're going to be using. So the API that we're going to be using, Omdb API. So the Omdb API is going to allow us for movies and TV series based on the name of a movie or some media. And notice the URL. The URL starts off with www.omdbapi.com, and it continues with the S as being a search term, and you can type whatever title for a movie that you wanted to find. Right here, I type Batman, and then you can follow it with an API key that you need to apply for from the third-party API vendors. I pay for this API key. You don't have to pay for it. They do have free versions with some restrictions, and you know, since this is a paid-for API key, please don't use this API key. All right, this is my personal one. All right, so let's get started. Let's try and continue where we left off. I'm not going to start my video, right, but I'm going to share my screen. Let me share this over here. Okay, can everybody see my screen over here?
Yep.
All right. Let's start IntelliJ, back up. And I had to terminate the React application that was being built since it was taking forever. Let's see. So let's go back to where we were. So WebDev 2021, spring, section 2. Okay. And I'm not sure if that prototype worked, so I'm just going to remove it. I'm just going to blow that away, and I'm just going to start it again. Okay, so I'm going to say X, create React app, and it'll be WebDev, Genuzi, prototype, and then React. Okay, hopefully this will go much faster than before. So as I was telling you, we are going to be using the following API, Omdb Api. And the website is this one. You can go and check it out. Here's where you can become a patron and pay for the API. You don't have to. They do have a free version of this, but you do have to apply for it, and that might take a couple of days. So make sure that you know, whatever API you decide to use, right, that you apply early, and that you can try it out and test it and make sure that it's going to work for you, right, and that you have time to make any changes if it doesn't work for you. Okay. So as I was saying, there are two quick queries that we can use. One of them is going to give us a summarized result set of movies or TV shows that we can look at more details, right? And so one is a summarized result, and the other one is a more detailed result of a specific movie if you provide the IMDb. All right, so it looks like it was able to create the project. And so let's go into the prototype application, and we'll have to install a couple more things here. So let's npm install React router DOM. All right, so that we'll need that so that we can do the navigation, right? We can create routers and then a whole bunch of routes to navigate to one component or another. Right, we'll also need to install a Bootstrap and Font Awesome and things like that. Okay, so we'll install Bootstrap for now. Font Awesome is nice to have, but it's not really required. So meanwhile, we can start opening the project. So let me bring in my IntelliJ and let's navigate there. So we'll say where we created the project. So it was under Januzzi and then Web Dev, and then 2021, and then Spring, section 2. And this is the prototype project. So let's open that up. Okay, so it's parsing the project. All right, okay, we already parsed it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to first run the default application, right, using a run configuration. So let's create a brand new run configuration. Oh, it's still parsing, so I can't interact with it. It's still indexing. It's not done. Yeah, it's still busy. Let's start creating a couple of folders in here. We'll need a folder for the components, right? Obviously, we'll need another folder for the services, right? If you're going to use Redux, right, you're going to have a reducers directory. You probably also want the actions in here. Okay, so those are some standard directories that you'll need, any project will need. And the entry point of the application is this app.js, right? So this is the entry point. We'll probably run this, right? But we won't want any of the initial content in here, right? And we'll probably need a couple of screens, right? If you remember the project says that you have to have like a search screen where you can type, provide some kind of form where you can provide all sorts of search criteria that is going to be used to search the remote third-party API. And then you need to have some kind of details screen that you can retrieve using some identifier, a specific record, and display it in much more detail. Right? So we'll create those two screens. Right? So let's create one screen for the search screen. And the other one, the details screen. So let's say new the details screen. So details screen. Okay. Let's just display just a few dummy content for now. So this will be both of them will have to import the React library. Okay, this is the details screen. It'll be just a function that returns something like details. H2, right, and we're going to export this. Okay. All right, we're going to do most of the same content in the search screen, just for now, anyway. All right, so let's replace this content. So this is going to be the search screen. There we go. And we're going to load it into the app.js over here. So in the app.js, instead of having this app here, we're going to just load those two components for now, right? So this will be the search screen and the detail screen. Okay, so it looks like it's done downloading the React Router down. Let's also install Bootstrap. And while that's going, we can continue over here. Let's see if we can run this. Right, so if we look at the terminal, we should be able to run the default application, having replaced some of the content here. Right, so let's do an npm start. It's taking a while. Let's bring in the, there it is. So there's our user interface for now, right? We just have those two screens. The styling is not exactly what we want, so we just blow away these two CSS and that logo, and instead, right, we can maybe load our Bootstrap library, right? And notice that I'm going to load the library right before our index, right? And the reason is that that's going to allow us to modify or override any styles that we don't like from Bootstrap, right? So we'll have the index CSS is going to be able to override because it's declared afterwards, right? Okay. All right, so it looks like we have Bootstrap in app. Probably what we want is wrap the entire application with a container, so maybe container fluid, right? So that it adds maybe some it adds some little margins all around. Okay. And now for the search screen and detail screen, probably we don't want them to show at the same time. And so we could use a router to display one or the other depending on what it is that we want to see. Okay. So let's do that. Let's bring in the a router. And so we say import a browser router from React DOM. And instead of displaying all of them, both of them at the same time, what we'll do is that we'll create a couple of routes and decide that we'll show one when the route is something and something else when the route is something else, right? So we'll create one route and we'll say, right, we'll load that, we'll import that also from React Router DOM, and we'll say that if the path is search, okay, then we're going to render search screen. And instead, if the path is details, right, then we'll render the details screen. Make sense? Okay, notice that it's not rendering anything because notice that we don't have any anything mapped to the root, right, to slash. There's nothing mapped to slash. But we do have something mapped to search. Okay, notice that we have the search screen, and we also have something in the detail screen. Right, we can navigate between the two. Right, it'd be useful if we could have maybe a landing page that would allow you to navigate to the search screen. So let's do that. Let's implement like a home screen, and that will be our default screen. Right, so this will be our home screen. And let's copy from search screen, which is mostly the same content we want here. So this will be home. Home, and let's bring it into our app, right? And probably we want to load that. We want to load the home screen when we have the root. Right, so this is the root, and so when we have nothing mapped to slash, right, or we have a slash, then we have it mapped to this home screen. So this is the default screen that we land, and you know, we can always navigate to the other screens by providing hyperlinks. So from home screen, perhaps we could provide a couple links, right? So we can import link, right, that will allow us to navigate, right, to wherever we want to go. Right, we can navigate to search. Okay, search. Or we can navigate to details. Okay, and maybe do a break here. All right, so the home screen now has two links. If we click on the search, notice that it navigates to search. Actually, notice that it loads it also, right? That's because we didn't do exact, right? So let's fix that. So if we go back to app and we make these all exact, right? We don't have that problem of loading, partial loading of these components, where we want these all to be exact. And so from here we can navigate to search, or we can go back to details. Okay. All right, excellent. So let's so we have some basic navigation. Now the search, right, is going to be interesting because the search screen is going to have an input field, right? We're going to have something like an input field here. And this will be, some form control. Okay. And this form control, presumably we're going to click on a button and we're going to search something, right? So there'll be some kind of button. This will be search. And this will be something with a BTN, BTN primary, something like that, right? Like that. So we click on search. And, well, you know what? I don't have the chat. If people are asking me questions, let me see if I have the chat open. Let me pick up the chat. If you have questions, please let me know in the chat. Okay. All right. So when we search, right? If I type here avatar searching for a movie, okay. Presumably, I'm going to go out to the server to some place out there in Omdb API. Is going to come back with, I don't know, 10 movies that match avatar, right? Now, what happens if I refresh the screen? If I refresh the screen, that means I'm gonna reset the DOM, right? And this is not gonna have any information, right? It's gonna empty out, right? So because the array of the result is stored in memory of the browser. When you do a reload, right, it throws away all that, right? So it can't remember what it is that you search for, right? It'd be nice if we could remember that it was avatar, and we could do the query again. Notice that there's no way for us to store the intermediate results, okay, and just re-render. Well, I mean, I guess you can. You can store them in local storage, but we haven't talked about local storage. Just like a little mini database that that you have here on the browser, but we haven't talked about that. So the only thing that we could do is that, if we could remember that we had originally searched for avatar, we could do the search again, right, and refresh the screen. But the only way to remember that would be to encode some information as part of the URL, okay, with the title or something that you search for, so that we could do the search again, right? So what we're going to do to kind of fix that, we're going to make this search screen map not only to search, but also to search slash and then some term or some title that we can search by, right? So let's put this inside a square bracket and then inside of a curly bracket. Okay, so that we can say that not only search, but also if you have slash search, right, and then followed by some title that we can search that movie for. Make sense? All right. All right, so we can navigate here not only by search, or we can search by Batman, right? We'll land on this screen. Okay. All right, excellent. And so search screen is going to generate some kind of list of movies, right? Something like UL class lists group, right? And then list here several movies that match my search criteria. So something like LI class. This will be list group item. and this will be Avatar, right? And just a couple movies that match some search criteria. This will be Avatar, Titanic, Terminator 2, Aliens. I have something for James Cameron. So there, so we have some search results, some couple movies in there. Okay. Now the idea would be that if I select any one of these movies, I could navigate to some details version of the movie that contains much more information, maybe the director, a plot, maybe the actors, their Rotten Tomatoes score or something like that, right? So this would be nice if this could be hyperlinks, right? So let's bring in the link that will allow us to navigate. All right, so let's convert these all into links. Okay, so there's a link. Notice that it's not linked to anything yet. So we can link it to, so that we can navigate to the details. Okay, and would be what, details? If I click on this, notice that it navigates to details, which is exactly what we want, right? But how does it know here? How do we know in the details screen what the details of what movie, right? So what we really want to do is encode here some IMDb number, right? That will allow us to pass the ID over to the next screen, so that the screen can then parse that ID and then search for the details of that movie, right? So we know how to do that, right? So what we could do is that in here, the details, notice that it makes no sense to navigate to the details screen all by itself, right? Instead, it only makes sense to go to the details if you are providing an IMDb ID. Now, if you're providing that, notice the placeholder, then I navigate to IMDb ID. So notice if I click on here, notice I'm providing the ID, and I come back to get to the details screen. Does that make sense? All right. All right, excellent. And while I'm in the details screen, I would probably want to go back, just navigate back. I probably have some back here, and we would want to use like history to go back, right? So let's import use history from React Router DOM, and then we can use the history to navigate. We can say, you know, here there could be a button that can say back, right? That when you click on it, say unclick, right? You do history dot go back. Okay, let's try it out. If I click on it, notice that it goes back to my search screen, right? And you can paint it, make it look prettier. All right, so we got the basics of the navigation down, right? The idea would be to populate this with whatever term you're searching, so that it remembers that you search for a particular term. Okay, so that and if there is, right, if there is something there, we do want to do the search, go and fetch something, and then populate this, right? If there's nothing on the search, well, that's okay, right? The list would be empty, and this would be empty as well. It should work for both cases. But let's first try and populate this, right? So in the search screen, right, we can parse the path. This path, right? This path is mapped to what? Is mapped to the search title here, right? So notice search and then title. Search and then title. See that? So we should be able to parse the title out in the search screen using use params, right? So we should be able to grab the title from use params. Okay. Having the title, we could populate this input field over here, right? So we can say that the value of this is the title. Okay, notice that it says Batman. See that? So whatever I type here, you know, avatar, notice that it's picking it up. Okay, now this title, because we'd be able to parse it from the path, right? We should be able to use it to generate that query, right? The query that allows us to fetch for Batman, right? So this query, notice I'm doing it manually. We really want to be able to do that programmatically, right? So let's copy that. And as a good practice, right? Any communication to a server, we're going to encapsulate it inside of a service file, right? So this would be movie service. Okay, in here, we want to be able to go to the, we want to be able to generate the, we want to be able to find movies by some title that we provide the title as an argument. Okay, and then here we do a fetch. We're going to fetch, right, the URL with Batman there, and the response is going to come back from the server. We're going to parse it out as JSON, right, and we're going to return it to whoever invoked this, right? But instead of having this Batman being hard-coded, we're going to use the title over here. So let's convert this into a template string, okay, and replace this Batman with title. Okay. All right, so let's export this. So it's an export, default, and then find movies by title. So now we can go back to the search screen and import it from here, right? So we can say import movie service from services movie service. So here we can now, right, use that title when we load it, right, to kick off a search. Right, we want to be able to do something like kick off this function, find movie, what was it called? By title, movies by title is going to what? It's going to use the movie service, find movies by title. Okay, we're going to pass it the title, and it's going to come back with a results. Okay. And what are we going to do? We need to store it in some kind of local variable, right? So that we can iterate and display the results. Okay. So for that, we're going to use use state, right? Use state is going to allow me to declare local variable. So const results. We'll set results. Use state, right? The results is going to be empty or object, which is going to represent this results, right? This object that is coming back from the server. This object. Okay, this that results, and we're going to set the results coming back from the server, and we know that that result contains a search, a total results, and response. Okay, that's what's contained here. Okay, so how do we kick off this function to actually find this, right? And that's where we're going to use a different hook, right? We'll use a use effect. So use effect is going to allow us to invoke a function of our choice. In particular, we want to run find movies by title. Find movie by title is going to, so this is use effects that call this function. In that function, we're going to call the service, which is going to retrieve the results, and we're going to store it locally in our results. Once we have those results, presumably we should be able to iterate and generate these links, right? And we know that inside of the results, presumably there is a search object, right? Array that we should be able to iterate over. So let's do that. Let's do the map. Do results dot search. That this is the array, right? It's this here. That is the array search. So search, and as we iterate, right, here's the movie object, right? So each one of these objects is a movie. They want to display maybe the title. And so and we're going to return something like this. Okay, let's see what comes back here. Oops, cannot read property search. All right, so this probably will need to initialize this. We'll probably need to initialize this as a search with an empty array. Cannot results.search. Results search. Oh, sorry. Use state search. This is the results object, set results. And then results.search, results.search as initial search. Let's see if the network came back with anything. Let's see. Let's inspect. Let's look at the network. Let's refresh. And let's see. It doesn't look like the query went out. It doesn't look like the query went out. Yeah, this use effect doesn't seem to have called anything. Alert. Oh, let's do a console. Console log find. Cannot read search probably blah 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 24. Results search. Let's do a let's make sure we put something in front of this so that this at least it doesn't die on us. And also search results. What about this set results? Did I spell something wrong? Set results. Oh, you know what? This is an array. I always do that. There's an array, not a curly bracket. There we go. There we go. Okay. There's our avatars, right? That's displaying many, many times. Okay. We don't really want to display many times. We want to display what? Instead of avatar, we really want to display the movie title, right? So we can say movie.title. And there it is. So actually, no, we need to dereference it using curly brackets. And there we have it. So for avatar, you know, we have the Last Airbender, the game, the spirits, and whatnot, right? So we can remove these hard-coded versions of this, right? We don't really need that. Okay. Also, when we click on each one of them, notice that we are hard-coding the URL with the ID. Instead of using this dummy ID here, right, we use the actual IMDb. Okay, so this could be an expression. Movie.imdb ID. Let's see, go back. Let's hover over it. Okay, notice that there it is. See that? There's the IMDb. That's the IMDb of Avatar. That's the IMDb of Avatar the game. Okay. All right, excellent. So that's working. So by the time we get to the detail screen, we have enough information using that ID to actually fetch the details of that movie. So let's do that. Let's come in here and let's go back. Let's go now to the detail screen. And what we're going to do is that we're going to try and parse out the IMDb, right? And we do that with path param, right? Or use params. So use params from, oh, we have it here, right? We can use this right here. So it says use params. There we go. So we can parse the, I think I called it IMDb ID, didn't I? Yeah, there it is. So that's the variable we're going to try and parse out from the URL from use params. It's going to parse that out. Okay. Once we have that, we could do a query and fetch the movie for that IMDb. And the query is going to look something like this. Right? It's going to look something like that, but instead, this is going to be I, and then this is going to be the ID. Okay, so in the service, right? That's where we talk to the server for this, right? We're going to generate a query to that URL. So let's copy this, and this is going to be find movie. It's a single ID, a single movie, so single movie by ID or IMDb ID, and we're going to pass the IMDb ID. So IMDb ID. And the URL, this is the URL. Right? This is the URL we're going to use, not the one that we have here. So let's replace this. Okay. And then we can use the IMDb parameter, right, to provide the actual IMDb ID for which I want to search. This is going to fetch, it's going to respond, right? And so, and also we're going to make this available to the rest of the world so that we can use it. Who wants to use this? Well, the details screen wants to use this, right? So let's import the service. So import user, what was it called? Movie service from the one up down to services, movie service. So here we want to call, find movie by IMDb ID. That basically is going to call movie service dot find movie by, no, not that one, by IMDb ID. We're going to pass the IMDb that we parsed. Right now, when do we do this? So we're going to do it when we load, right? So we need to be notified when we load. For that, we're going to use effect. This effect, right, is going to invoke this function. So this will be use effect, right, with a function. We're going to call find movie by IMDb ID. Right, make sure we don't we're going to go into a loop, and we'll use the IMDb that we parse from the parameters. Okay. Now, once it comes back from the service, so this comes back from the service, where do we put the data? Right, so we'll need a state variable to put the data. Right, so we'll use a state variable. We'll declare it here. We'll say const the actual movie that comes back from my IMDb ID, and we'll need a set movie. So this is use state. We're going to initialize it with an empty object. Okay. All right, so now we have a placeholder. So when the movie comes back from fetching it from the server, right, we can then take that data, right, and we can set the movie with the data. So the data is the movie. Okay. All right, so we could display here what that data looks like, just for shucks, just to know what it looks like, right? We can say JSON.stringify and print out the movie. Let's see what comes back. All right, notice that indeed it went out to the server, and it came back with data. See that? Right, and this in this case is avatar. If we go back and just click on this one, notice that this is avatar the game. If we go avatar spirits, notice that is avatar spirits. So we have the object that is coming from the server, right? Notice that when I go back, I have enough information that I should be able to re-render this, right? Right now it's hard-coded, obviously, that's why it's rendering it. Okay, well, it's actually reading it from here, right? That's how this is being populated, and it's driving the content down below. So it looks as if it remembered from the last time that we were here, right? So we can go back and forth. We can navigate forward and backwards, right? And notice that it's kind of like remembering. But actually, what it's doing is that it's fetching the data all over again and re-rendering the whole thing. Okay. So yeah. So now that we have data here, we could render some of this content dynamically. Let's try and do that. So here in the details screen, right, instead of just displaying a movie object, right, we can actually display something, right? For instance, here we have the title of the movie. So here, instead of detail screen, we could say movie.title. There it is. See that? Avatar spirit. So if we go back and click on something else, notice it says avatar. Right? Avatar Last Airbender. See that? Right? We could also maybe display the plot in a paragraph, maybe. Let's say the plot. This could be, you know, movie.plot. There it is. See that? It says in a war-torn world of elemental magic, a young boy, yada, 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 right? Or if I click on avatar, it says, you know, a paraplegic marine dispatches to the moon, yada, yada, yada. See that? We can also maybe display an image, right? So maybe this could be you know, an image here, let's say IMG, where the source, right, is, I believe, movie.poster has an image for that. Okay, there it is, right? Maybe we can make it a little bit smaller and say that is 200 pixels, maybe even smaller, right? And maybe we can float it to the right-hand side. We can say style, float, right, float, colon, right? There it is, okay? You know, down below, we could maybe display the, what do we have here? We have the actors, right? So we can display the actors down below. And let's see, we can say, you know, div. Let's say movie.actors. There they are, you know, as an array. Actually, it's a string of comma separated. It's a comma separated string. We could convert this into a list, right? We could say maybe here's a UL, and then we can take the actors. We can take the actors, and this is an array which we can split on the comma, right? So there it is, right? And so that's an array already, right? So that array we can map over that. We can say map, and so we get one actor. Okay, so this would be the actor. And each one of these, we could return a line item, right, that contains the actual actor's name. There it is. See that? So it's a list of actors. Make sense? Anyway, so you can make this as pretty and as complex and sophisticated as you want it. All right, so let's go back and work on this a little more. Right, so notice that I can't type this avatar, right? I can't actually search for anything that I want. It's hard-coded, right? And it's reading it straight from this over here, okay? So we need to make this editable, right? So the only way that to make it editable is to represent it as a state variable, okay? So this title comes from the parameters that we're reading from the path, right? So we need to instead have a local state variable where we can represent that, right? So let's create here a local variable. So this is maybe a, you know, search title, right? And set search title, right? And this is going to be a use state that is going to have as initial value the title. Okay, so once we parse it from the path, we're going to use that to initialize the search title. And now if this input field, instead of using the hard-coded title, if we use the search title, we should be now able to edit it. Notice that it's taken the value, the original value, but we should be able to edit it, right? And the way we're going to edit it, so notice that if I refresh, notice that the, actually no, we need to do it here. We need to initialize it here. We're going to say going to initialize it here. So we're going to say set search title being the title. Oops. Set search title. Set. Did I misspell it? Set search title. Oh, the array. Okay, all right, it's working. Okay, so I don't, it's working. All right, so it's setting that value. So anyway, now I should be able to edit it, right? If I do what? If I say here, on change, we can take the event, and then we can initialize and say, set search title to being the event.target.value, right? So that we can actually type at this, right, and do the search. Make sense? So that when I click on this button search, right, I can actually do the search. All right, so let's do that. So this search right here, there's the search. All right, what we're going to do is that when we click on the search, we're going to kick off this find movie by title, right? And we can pass it an argument, right? So we're going to say, on click, right? We can call the we can invoke this find movies by title. Right, we can call that. So let's try it out. See that that's avatar, and this could be instead Terminator. Say search, and that didn't work. What's going on? Button on click and find movies by title. Find movies by title. Oh, okay. It would be find movies by title, and we need to pass the argument title, right? Okay. Otherwise, it's always going to use this title here. So this is going to be title here. So it's going to be a local variable title as opposed to this title over here. Okay, so let's try it out. Okay, avatar, and then let's try now Terminator. Search. There we go. See that we have Terminator. Oh, okay. So this is going with the undefined because looks like it's not using this, right? It's not using this. So okay, so find. Okay, so instead of using this empty here, I'm going to pass it as default the search title here. Or I guess here it could be when it first loads, right? It can load that, use that title as initial one, but later on the title will be passed in as the search title as opposed to that, right? Okay, so now it's avatar. So notice that here is if it's Terminator. Okay, notice that it loads Terminator, but I can override it later on and say aliens. Search, and it searches over here. Okay. Notice that we need to do one thing. Notice that this is still showing Terminator, right? Even though I search by aliens. So that if I refresh, notice that it's going to load Terminator. Okay, so so not only are we going to, when we search, not only we're going to do the find movies by title, we should encode that title as part of the URL. Okay, so we could do that here. We can say in the find movies by title, the title will, so that we can remember next time around, we can push that into the history, right? So let's grab the history here. So use history. And say const history, use history, so that we can store that title in the history. And say history.push, so we'll remember the title next time. And so that now if I notice that this says Terminator, but if I say Titanic and do a search, notice that it remembers Titanic. See that? So that even if I refresh, notice that it remembers that that's where I was. So if I go to, oops, I guess it doesn't have any actors. let's see, Titanic. Maybe I need to initialize that. Let's go to in the details screen. I might need to initialize this. The details screen, the movie. Maybe I need to have actors here, or maybe I need to make sure that there are actors here. If there are actors, then do the split. Otherwise, it's going to die. I mean, there it is. Notice that now I can click on this. Titanic reads that information. If I go back, it refreshes nicely. If I go forward, it remembers as well. Okay. If I do an avatar, right, in search, I go in. Notice that it remembers, right, that I go back. It does the search again, right? So it looks like it's working nicely. You know, it's able to do the list, you know, encode it in the URL at the top, right? And I can navigate. I can come back. It remembers, so it's perfect, right? Notice that I can grab this and I can send it to somebody. Maybe somebody else has a Safari browser, right? And if they copy and paste the URL, they'll be able to see exactly what I see, right? So the URL contains enough information that I can recreate the state of the application, right? So that I can interact with it fully like I was over here. Does that make sense? All right, excellent. All right, the other topic I wanted to discuss is the capability of being able to log in, right, or being able to identify the person and know who they are for maintaining some kind of identity and some kind of session information for that specific user. And the way we do that is through the use of cookies. And cookies is a form of tracking or remembering something about a user so that we can provide convenience in maintain a conversation with the user. Not necessarily tracking in the, you know, as a malicious, you know, me wanting to know what you're doing at every click. More as in, I want to give you, I want to provide you with the convenience of having a conversation. Okay. So let's take a look at that. So how we implement that. So the way we're going to implement it, right? Let's go back to the Java. Well, before we get that, any questions so far? So what we've built, you know, 2 screens, being able to display a list, navigate to a detailed screen. Now, this is the absolute minimum that we are looking for the prototype, right? Ideally, you'll have gone even farther. At least being able maybe to log in, right? Identify yourself, maybe have a profile screen, which is what we're going to be focusing now, right? So let me open up a project, right, for this section, the Java project, right? And let's discuss how is that we would be able to maintain stateful, remember something about users, right? So how do we do that? So what we're going to do is that we're going to have here in the controls, we're going to create a set of examples on how is that we can maintain state. Okay. Now there's a set of slides that discusses this. Let me bring them up. Right, so if you go for in this week's module, where is it? Maintaining application state. I guess it's in the wrong place. Let me put it in the right place. Let me bring that up. Okay, maintaining application state. Right. So we're going to be using the following technique, right, which is called cookies, right? So the problem is that HTTP by design is a stateless protocol, meaning there's nothing in the protocol. Well, actually there is, but the servers, the HTTP servers, the HTTP clients were not designed to track people, right? Meaning that if you had multiple browsers, right, hitting a server, the same URL, the same server, the server cannot distinguish from one user from the next. Okay, so for instance, if you if we create here a controller, right, and we call it HTTP session examples, okay, and we make this a REST controller, and we have a function here that says public string say hello, okay, and you know, as far as the server is concerned, one client looks identical to the other, right? So if I have here return hello, right, and I map this to some get mapping hello, right, and then I run this, oops, something's wrong. What happened here? Request blah 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 blah. Define class. Hello service method. Yada yada yada. Oh, I think I already have a hello maybe. We're gonna define the class debug blah 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 blah. Hello service say hi. There's already a bean with hello. Oh, okay. Oh, I have a service here, okay, that already has a hello. Okay. All right, so let's instead of hello, so we'll say hello to. What's that? Let's run that. Yeah, you can't have two URLs that map to exactly the same URL. Okay, so it's running. So say I have here a Chrome browser, and I go to localhost 8080. Oops. And I say hello to, it comes back with hello world. Okay. If I have a Safari browser and I go to the same URL and this says hello to, it comes back, you know, predictably with the same response, obviously. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that there is nothing in the HTTP request between the client and the server that would allow the server to know anything, distinguish one from the other, right? They would all be treated the same, right? But we want to be able to write applications where, you know, one person might be treated differently than someone else, right? I might have my shopping cart and you have your shopping cart. I have my wish list, you have your wish list. It makes no sense, right, that we always have the same content. I have my bank account, you have your bank account, right? So we need a place where we can store information specific to each individual. How do we do that? So the way we're going to do that is through the technology of cookies. And the way it works is as follows, right? You have Alice here that she wants to go to a server called acme.com. So she types acme.com. And it's the very first time that Alice ever goes to acme.com, right? So when she types that into the browser looks up acme.com in the cookie store, right? So every browser can maintain a cookie store, right? And it's basically a whole bunch of strings, right, that are mapped to each domain, right? And when the browser looks for if there are any cookies for acme.com, but that's where you want to go, acme.com, it finds no cookies, right? It says, okay, well, fine, I have no cookies. So it just lets the request go to acme.com with no cookies, okay? And so what the server sees is says, ooh, there are no cookies, right? All this information is being passed around through the headers, right? When the server sees that there are no cookies, the server creates a new cookie. It says, okay, I'm going to create a new cookie. It's just basically a random string. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to instantiate an object called HTTP session I'm going to instantiate it. Now I'm going to remember this object. I'm going to remember this object for you. Right? This object belongs to you. And the way I'm going to know it's yours is because I'm going to create a map. And I'm going to use my random cookie here that I generated as a key that allows me to retrieve this HTTP session. So I'm going to send you back this cookie. If you come back to me now, instead of coming back to me with no cookie, and you come back to me with this cookie, right? I will make sure that I will give back to you the same exact object I created for you. And this is going to kind of be like your private, right, working space. You can put anything in there, right, to remember from one request to the next, so that we know it's still you, right? And you can store in there anything you want. Maybe a shopping cart, right? Some account information, right? Some preferences, whatnot. You can put anything you want. You know, as long as the server is running, it'll remember the session for you. If Bob comes along, right, Bob will get a different cookie, and they will get a different object, HTTP session object, right? So in the application, I can store the session. I can store objects in the session using Alice's cookie. It'll be Alice's objects that I store in there, right? If I'm using Bob's cookie, it'll be Bob's objects that I'm storing in there. Notice that the cookie goes back to the browser, and the browser stores the cookie in the cookie jar. So it's next time around, Alice comes, and now there is a cookie, right? The same cookie that you provided. It's going to send over the cookies to the server. The server says, it's still you. It's you again, right? So it looks up your HTTP session, right? And now you can, put stuff in there if you want, right? It passes it to your application, where you can use, things such as set attribute and get attribute to store things in there or retrieve things from there. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, right? So the way this works is that basically we're going to use this new HTTP session object, right, as part of our functions that are mapped to URLs. Okay, and so this session object will have been already instantiated for us. By the time it gets to us here, already has gone through the process of identifying, what cookie is mine and what HTTP session belongs to me, right? All that has been resolved, and what you see is basically the end result of the session. Here it is. This is the session that is for Alice, or this is a session for Bob, right? All that is transparent to you, right? The logic is the same, regardless whether it's Alice or Bob, right? We store data in there, we retrieve data, but whenever we store or retrieve, it'll be for Alice or Bob, right? But that's irrelevant to us, right? Because our code will be generic. It will be generic, and it will work for anybody. Okay, so let's implement this. Let's copy this, and let's bring it over to our new controller here. There it is. Okay, and let's bring in all these variables here. Okay. All right, so this is going to allow us to store things in the HTTP session, right? The HTTP session is going to be mapped to a cookie, and I'm going to be able to store whatever I want in the session. The way I store things in the session is using the set attribute function, right? Set attribute allows me to put anything I want in some key, right? I can treat it like a hash tag, like a hash table. I can put whatever I want, right? As long as I remember where I put it, right? I can put anything I want. It could be a string. It could be a full object. It could be a shopping cart object. Okay, but I need to remember where I put it. Right? Right now, I'm just passing that as an attribute that I can pass along, right? And then once I set it, I can then retrieve it, right? Subsequently, I can go in and retrieve it. Right, so let's put this at the bottom here. Right, and I can retrieve it. This will be the same session that was used to store the data. It'll be the same session when I retrieve the data, right? And the way I know it's the same session is because if it's me, Alice, and then Alice again, it'll be the same cookie, right? But if it's Bob, it'll be a different cookie, and then it'll be Bob's attributes, right, and Bob's values. Okay. All right. So let me demo this for you. Let's run this. Let's try storing something. Okay, so it's running. Let's try and use this over here, and let's try and store something. So here's Alice. And Alice is coming, and she wants to store what was it called? What I call it? I remember. API session. Okay, API session, and I want to set the username to be Alice. Okay. Okay. Then subsequently, maybe a couple minutes later, I'm going to say, oh, what did I put in there? I'm going to say get the username. And it comes back as Alice. So it remembers, right? So I went through here. It set that the username is Alice, right? And it responded with attribute is Alice. And later on, a few minutes later, right? I went in there with the get, and I passed the same attribute as before, which was the username, and it retrieved from the same session as before, right? The same session that I got from before. It is retrieving by the get. You can retrieve the attribute if you remember what you put in there. In this case, is the username. It comes back and we cast it to its original data type, and it's the name Alice, and that's where we get Alice. Notice it's completely different if it's somebody else, right? Trying to use this. Right? If I say, API session set attribute username Bob. Notice it's Bob here, and later subsequently I retrieve this. I say get username. Notice it says Bob. So there's Alice retrieving her name, and here's Bob retrieving his name. Notice that they get two different results, right? Because they are being keyed off of different cookies. You can actually see the cookies that are being used, right? If I put this down below and look at the network, and when we say retrieve, you can look at the network here. There it is, our username. You can see in the headers, you can see that down below, there's a cookie here. See that? These are all the cookies. This is the cookie that the server generates. See that session ID? That's a typical Java server cookie is generated. Notice that it's the hexadecimal random number. Same here with Bob here. We inspect. If we look at the network for Bob, right, here's username. And let's refresh. Notice that it has its J session ID. There's different. See, this is F36C4, where this is 434AF099. See that? Okay, so there are distinct values, and that's how it knows which session to use for Bob and which session to use for Alice. And each one has its own hash table where they can put whatever you want. Make sense? At some point, these sessions will time out, right? The server, every time you hit it, every time your request, goes out and uses the session, a timer starts, right? And when the timer goes off, the session is invalidated and thrown away. So if you're within that time, you can keep retrieving the data that is stored in there, but eventually it'll time out. After 30 minutes of inactivity, it'll go away, right? That's very important because imagine you have thousands and thousands of users, and each one having their own session. Right? You're asking the server to remember all the stuff for you, especially if you're storing things in there that are very expensive objects. Right? You'll run out of RAM real quick. Right? So you need to be able to clean up after yourself. Right? The server needs to cleanse all that data that is stored in there. Make sense? Okay. So we could use this technique now for implementing things such as logging in, right? For instance, we can simulate like a registering as if we had a database. We don't have a database yet, but instead we'll use just a plain old array, right? So let's go in here and let's implement something that might look like registering. And I don't have a user's object. Let's create a user object real quick. Let's say new user, not user. So user, there we go. And in here, let's just have maybe string username and private string password. Okay. And let's create here, let's generate setters and getters. There we go. So let's go back here. So now you have a user. Come on. Mhm. Import the class. Yes, that one. Okay, we have that. What else do we need to import? Let's import that. Import the class. Import that one. We don't want get. We're gonna let's change this to get, which will be easier. And we won't use that. So we'll just get what we'll get is we'll register, and we'll pass username and password as part of the path, just so it's easier. So password, username and the password. Okay, and we'll just parse them here. So path variable it'll be string username. Okay, and we'll have the same thing for password. Okay, and so we can register you. And to register you, we're going to create a user, new user, and we're going to say user set username. It'll be the username, and we'll say user set password. Okay. All right, and then we can store in the current user. Right, we're gonna store that user. So we're gonna we're gonna create them, we're gonna add them to the array, and we're gonna make them the current user. Maybe just to remember that this person is logged in, right? We can call it whatever we want. Okay. Okay. So later in the subsequent query, what we could do is ask, is anybody logged in? Right? Using something like this. We can use we can say, what is the current profile of the current logged in user, right? And we can map it to a URL called API profile. Tell me who's logged in. At first, nobody might be logged in, right? So this would return null. There's no current user. And so we would know that nobody's logged in. But because somebody just registered, right, then yes, there's somebody there. Okay. So yeah, that's a user. And then we can also log out. We can log out. Also, we'll use get here. Right, API logout. So it's going to invalidate the session. It's going to say, I don't care that you had a session. I'm going to blow away everything in there. There's no need to remember anything. Right. So any cookie that was associated is no longer valid. Okay. Don't invalidate it and don't accept it anymore. And then a subsequent time, maybe next day or something, I could log back in. Obviously my session will be dead by now, right? I can provide the username and password, the same thing as we did when we registered. Okay, here they are. And I can provide the username and password here, username and the password. Log in. I can use those to compare against the usernames as I iterate over my array, comparing those usernames to the usernames in the array. Username and compare it against the password here. There we go. If we do find it, then I'm going to put that user as the current user, or otherwise I'm going to return null. See that? All right, so let's try it out. Let's see. Is there any errors? I don't think. Let's restart. Let's see. Okay, so let's go back here and try to register somebody. Again, with the same two browsers. Let's see if we got any errors here. No errors. Okay, so we have the two browsers. On one, I'm going to try and register. So I'm going to say API register Alice with the password P1. Right, so it comes back saying, yep, I was able to register you. This is the object that I'm remembering. Right, I can say who's currently logged in. So profile. No, wait. profile. There it is. So we know that that person is logged in, right? Alice is logged in. Or they can log out. Okay, and then if they check the profile, notice that it doesn't come back with anything. Unless they log in back, if we log back in with Alice and P1, notice that now Alice is the current user. And if I ask for the profile, notice that it remembers that the Alice is logged in. Now, at the same time, right, I could be trying to do the same thing in a different browser, right, where I can try to register. So notice if I ask here for the profile, notice that Bob Hope. No, this is cached. That's a cached value. Yeah, I've refreshed. I'm refreshing. Okay, notice that nothing's coming back. Right, that was from last night. So if I try to log in with Bob and P2, notice that nothing comes back because Bob is not registered. Right, I need to register first. So register as Bob Hope. You notice that I've registered. I can now ask who is currently logged in. It says that Bob Hope is logged in. I can log out. Right, so nobody now is logged in again now, but I can log in by providing the same Bob and P2, and it's not finding it. Did I not? How come it's not finding it? Did I not register? Let me try registering again. Oh, Hope. It was Hope. There we go. Yeah, so I found it. I can ask for the profile now, right? And it remembers that it's Bob Hope. See that? Until I log out, and then the profile is gone. See that? Okay. So yeah. So we can have two folks, right, completely independent of each other, with their own username and passwords and accounts and everything separate, right? So that they don't trample each other's work. Right, so that's very important, so that each one can have its own identity and its own workspace and its own everything. Okay. All right, there you have it. Right, so we were able to talk about session management, maintaining login and logging out and registration. Also, we worked on the profile and the prototype. Right, being able to retrieve something from a server and then display it, and then navigate to the details. I think this is plenty to get you going with your application, with the project that is due at the end of the semester. So yeah, I would get going as soon as possible. Get going with the interacting with your remote API. Perhaps implement the login, registration, profile, and obviously this would need to be connected to a database. We'll talk about database next time we meet, right? And store all this information and retrieve it from a relational database, and we'll do that next Monday. Okay. All right, excellent. So that's all I had for you today. Any questions? And again, I'd like to apologize from earlier with the network problems that we had. Any questions? All right, folks, if there's nothing else, then thank you for coming, and I'll upload this to YouTube later tonight. Okay?
Thanks, Professor.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Good night.